when we talk about our bullseye, it doesn't mean we're not going to hit other parts of the dartboard. So our bullseye was a female who was 30 to 45 years old. And we kept going down and down and down further until that perfect bullseye matched all of the different things that we wanted to accomplish.
Well, hello and welcome to the J. Sterling Hughes Show, where we share how we have built our family law practice from 0 to 25 attorneys and 15 million in revenue, and all in the past 10 years. My purpose here is to document what's working and what's not working, with hopes that you can take that, you can recontextualize it and shorten your success curve. My guest today is my co-founder and partner, Tony Carls. Tony and I started Sterling Lawyers way back 10 years ago. And this is the third part of a 3-part series. And in this part, we're taking what we did in terms of research and brainstorming and all of that in the first one, with the client interviews that Tony did in the second one. And we're combining all of that and walking through for you how we took all of that and created a service offering designed specifically for folks going through a divorce action. So we're going to share a lot of real, insightful, very subtle nuggets of what we've done to be real successful serving these clients, and the whole process from like communicating with them and marketing all the way through serving them as they're leaving us at the end of their case. So Tony, thanks for joining me again today. Where do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, like we talked about coming up with the idea, doing some research, some self-assessment, talking to some potential clients to validate your idea. Now we got to put together what's our service offering? What's going to make us different? What's going to make us a gym without weights? As I tell my team here at Rocket Clicks all the time, it's not interesting that you're a gym with weights. Every single gym in the world has weights. So congratulations, you're like everyone else. Nothing's special about you. So how do we become special is the question. And we have to take all of that information and let's boil it down into some meaningful parts so we can go to the market.
The case study we wanted to talk about were divorce clients, and specifically how we crafted an offering to them to be a gym without weights, something more special than that, to use that analogy for a law firm, because they can go to a whole bunch of different family lawyers, right? Kind of all saying they'll represent them, but how can we make that experience unique and special for them? So starting first with the features of the service, how would you describe those?
I think the features are probably the easiest part. If we're going to look at what are the features, like we're doing legal representation for people going through divorces. They're generally going to be contested. That's why they're working with us. We're working on, asset divisions, whether that's marital homes, working on helping them make decisions on parenting plans and kids. So that's the easy part. I think everyone checks the feature box pretty well.
One of the things you did great where you talked in your marketing to the benefits, which was our real hook. So that's much harder. So it's like, you've heard the analogy, right? You're selling the hole, not the drill, right? And so benefits here, you came up with some real interesting ways to communicate those.
Yeah, I think Grant Cardone has a really good formula for this. It's feature benefit advantage when he talks about it. And I think one of the ways that we're looking at divorce services is we have a lot of the same features. The benefits of how we do it versus how other people do it is our how. It's not the what, it's the how. And that's somewhat interesting. So, our how is we're a law firm, but we're exclusively family law. Mm-hmm. Our how is we bill clients like everybody else, but we only do it on a fixed fee. Our how is we really care about service, and we're obsessed with reviews and client feedback. So you're going to get client survey scores throughout your process. After the consult, 90 days in, after the matter's concluded, because we want to make sure we're doing a good job. So some of the benefits of those things is actually dealing with some of the things that you care about as a potential client going through that, which is you're unsure of what's happening. You're afraid of making a mistake. You're in a lot of pain, and we want to do our best to reduce it all. Yeah. So the advantage of working with us is, we're experts because this is all we do. We talk about if you're in Milwaukee County and you're working with a particular judge on your file, we know how that judge might respond to different types of arguments. Or you have a certain GAL on your file. We know how this GAL actually values X versus Y. We get into the details and you can feel like, oh, okay, like they're real. Like they actually are experts at this versus just saying something. Our fixed fee is a risk reversal that we did. And that risk reversal is we have to do a good job interviewing you during the consult. And if we do a bad job interviewing you during the consult, we actually don't understand the issues. We give you a price. We are left holding the bag because we didn't do our job well. but you have security in what it's going to cost. So you know when you leave that consult room exactly how much it's going to cost you to go through your divorce, when nobody else is going to tell you that. So your lack of security or your lack of certainty in this very tumultuous time, at least you can count on your lawyer to not add more fuel to that fire. And another benefit is we care tremendously about reviews. And one of the differences for us is you get direct access to your attorney. We give you their cell phone numbers. You don't get charged when you call them. Like, we care a lot about client service, and we're going to actually measure. So you know that up front, if something's not going well, you can bang on us at 90 days and we're going to know whether or not we're serving you well. And then we're going to actually talk about it with our team. So like, there's a lot of difference there in how we go to market and convert these, like, what did they care about? Solving my pain, caring about me, being on my team, giving me certainty in an uncertain time. We're actually addressing some of those psychographics that we talked about in one of the other podcasts.
Yeah. We took those concepts, we really communicated them out to the firm over and over again in what we call our 3 uniques, right? Because we wanted everyone in our firm, our legal team, our support team, to understand that the things that we were unique, that we offered to our divorce clients, where we're only doing family law. So we're not breaking away from their case and running over and doing a PI case and then doing a drunk driving case. We were just focused on their case type to become really, really good in that. So that was the first one. The second one was that we were going to give them a certainty around their cost. They're not going to get hit with the bill every month that it was a shocker. It was going to be one cost, and they're going to know it up front before we took on their case. And the last thing was that you talked about the reviews, meaning we were going to reach out to them a lot. That was our way to hold ourselves accountable for giving them good service, because we knew that we were going to be asking and they would tell us if they were unhappy about something.
Yeah, we wanted to grow and we needed a way to like maintain quality of service while we grew, instead of like letting it spiral out of control in a certain area. It allowed us to stay on top of that.
As a follow-up to that, I looked this morning, I think we have today around 9,300 reviews, which in family law, that's so far beyond ridiculous to get and super hard. And it's because of that focus for 10 years, or actually 8 years when we finally did the pivot, or 8.5 years now. So we talked about the benefits, taking our features, moving them to benefits. And then you move that to advantages, because we could tell a client, hey, look, you work with us, you're going to get people that have unique insights to personalities that are going to officiate over your case. We're going to know them. We also talked in our firm a lot about the pain points. What are the client pain points that they had, and how can we eliminate them? This is part of the day-to-day service of them. How do we do that internally?
So if we're talking about how do we address the service part of it, I think there's several different things. One of the biggest complaints attorneys generally have is that they don't communicate well. Like they're too slow to communicate. They're not accessible. There's lots of complaints in that vein. So that was one area that we wanted to address. Another area is there's a lot of information traded back and forth. That process is painful, especially if you have to do it more than once and it's not super organized. So it's another area we looked at. And then the uncertainty part of it. So there's a lot of things that from once you're in a law firm, I didn't know when we started, but as I was there for a longer period of time, like made sense to me. But that's because there's so many at bats. So like, how do we give them security in that throughout the process? So on the communication front, like we were very focused on making sure our call center had really high answer rates all the time. And if it was a current client call that was coming in, we made sure that got directed, and we were always giving them the attorney's direct contact information. And they already had the attorney's direct contact information. So if that came to the call center, that likely meant we had an issue that we were going to be able to address from a service perspective. On the trading of information front, we spent a lot of time, energy, and effort focusing on our first 30 to 60 days of service. So integrating our pre-consult intake form with the post-funding intake form, which is more robust, with the financial disclosure or affidavit, depending on where you're located, form, and all of that information gathering. So we just had to do it once. So clients had to enter information one time, and then our team could leverage it. And how we honestly took the attorney out of some of that first part, because we didn't know if they had 40 active files. Are they going to be in court when the client funds? Are they working a big trial? We don't know where their calendar is going to be. So how do we make the client feel really safe and secure once they come on board? and be really intentional about all of that stuff to like really increase the service credit, build some credibility in the trust bank for Sterling at the front by having really high-end processes at the front of that service line. So those are like some of the things that we did operationally to make the service way more tailored for the client, because we knew what some of their pain points were going to be. We understand how our systems worked and how the flow of our business worked.
Yeah.
Those pain points were still their pain points. We had to address them regardless of how it felt to us. It just allowed us to problem solve them because we knew them. We actually knew them, and they weren't like, that's just John being a pain in the butt. It's actually like, no, this is what they're all saying. They all want this. Yeah. So we do this.
Just to amplify a bit more on what you're talking about, the intake forms, it took us a while to figure this out, but when we understood that in the intake process, asking them very few questions up front, just the absolute bare minimum of what we needed to ask, to the point where they can start telling their story, was a turning point for us, because we didn't beat them down with all a million questions of like, tell us your 401k number and tell us all your kids' birth dates and all that sort of stuff. How many kids you have? 3. Okay. They're what? 7, 8, 9. Okay. Got that. Then we got right into tell us what's going on and let them start telling their story, and then tailored that intake process. Then once they got in the console, then the attorney can get a little more into that. But even there, we didn't go very much beyond that.
Right.
Because it's so much more important than for the client to tell their story, not to go into.
Yeah, we really wanted the client to focus on their story. I think we did a lot of training on the consult side on like how to pull out all of the relevant information in a way that it doesn't feel like it's a dentist
exam.
Yeah, exactly. Like this should feel emotional. It is. Divorce is one of the hardest things you're going to go through. If like that's something that you have to go through in your life, how do we set the service up so that it matches that, versus like, hey, we deal with this all day. We're hardened. So just man up, get up, muscle up, deal with it. It's not super loving. It doesn't create a great experience, especially for our ideal client, who's, like we talked about last time, our lovable Molly.
So after we kind of refined how we solve the problem for them, I know you did a lot of work around understanding who needs the solution, who needs what we had to offer. And in particular for divorce clients, it's obvious on some level, right? Someone going through a divorce, but you took it much deeper than that. Can you talk to any of the details around what work you did there, how you implemented that?
When we thought about our ideal client profile, we didn't just stop with like, it's the bullseye. And when we talk about this, when we talk about our bullseye, it doesn't mean we're not going to hit other parts of the dartboard. So our bullseye was a female who was 30 to 45 years old. And we kept going down and down and down further until that perfect bullseye matched all of the different things that we wanted to accomplish. So we ended up with 30 to 45-year-old woman who's married, has kids, 401k, works full-time, and is in the medical industry. That's generally who we're targeting. Ideally, if they're a nurse, like that was the perfect bullseye, because what we knew about that person is they're super busy. They're financially who we're targeting. They have an unbelievably massive referral base because they're in larger institutions. Women share way more than men do, and they're more social than men are. So if we can serve them really well in all the different areas that are required, because a nurse has a chaotic, so how can we meet them where they're at? How can we give them certainty in what we need to from a billing perspective? And how can we generate great service from an actual tactical nuts and bolts perspective? How we do onboarding, how do we make it convenient, how do we make it easy, how do we make all of this stuff easy from research all the way through service? We were going to have a better chance of driving greater review scores, which was going to go back into our marketing. Marketing goes to sales, sales goes to service, service goes all the way back to marketing, and it either is going to increase your marketing costs or decrease it.
Yeah.
Most people don't understand that, but that's what happens. And if you can get that engine working in a really great circle, because you have good marketing messaging, your sales is oriented around that person, your services is oriented around that person feels great. They're going to send you referrals. And if you identify an ICP that is more oriented to give you referrals, even better. And that's kind of how we thought about it. Is even 30% of our practice that ICP? No, but that's how we focus on all of the content, all the messaging, all the offers, because they're the most discerning type of client that we have because of the life they live and the job they have. That's how we thought about it.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that center bullseye in no way reflected more than a small percentage of our total clients. I think was 51 or 52% were female, right? And so that clearly is, we're talking about males, the other 48%. So I thought it was always fascinating how you did a lot of work articulating the psychographics for our ideal clients, and then designing the marketing and the processes that were in the service side of things to fit those psychographics, especially around their motivations. You identified what they valued and really where their emotional priorities were. So you want to talk to those three things and perhaps kind of overlay that with how you designed service side to fit that.
So from a messaging perspective, what we talked about, if it was, I think in a separate podcast, we talked about how we built our messaging on the site transparently, giving lots of resources so they had the ability to research and they were accessible. So we didn't do a lot of trading back and forth of give me your email to user calculator type stuff, because we knew that was something that they didn't want.
Yeah.
And when we wrote content, we wrote it for that particular avatar. So in a lot of our content, if you're going to pick a gender pronoun, I know you got really good with this. Like, you often say her instead of he, and just in your general communication. And that was on purpose, because it's who most of our clients were. And our job was to get into their minds. Like, how can we get into their minds through really understanding what they cared about? What does it mean to them to have custody of their kids and decision making? How do we write about that stuff? How do we think about those things? And how do we integrate that into our service with how we think about our intake process, how long those calls should take, how those conversations should go, just on the front end of that, and directly into service like we were talking about before.
Yeah, you also did some work around how they choose a lawyer, and I think you kind of came up with three main areas that we needed to be proficient in, and one of them was obviously seeking recommendations. So that goes back to building a good service, doing right by them, then they'll tell their people. And then you talked about just how deep they would go in that whole research process.
Yeah.
And so we would track when people first contacted us until when they hired us. Sometimes it would be years in between. And so staying in front of them, offering them good information kind of kept us top of mind for them. So that was a long-term play that you implemented that worked out, still continues to work out to this day. And we had someone sign up just like a day or two ago that first popped into our system 3.5 years ago. And that's not abnormal either. So, And then the last one is just our responsiveness and ease of communication. You alluded to that earlier. What we found is that about 80% plus of all issues came from lack of communication. It wasn't the results in court, which is so counterintuitive. If you communicated well and empathetically around what happened, client can handle a loss in court. But it's the lack of empathy, the poor communication, the lack of responsiveness built up like plaque.
Such a big point there, because we focused on it, and that was still true of where we didn't perform for clients. That was still true for us. And typically it boiled down to, it wasn't what happened in court, is they didn't know it was going to potentially come.
Yeah.
So if we did a good job just setting expectations ahead of time, here's what the process is going to look like. This is what we want to happen. This is what we think might happen. There's a 50-50 shot at this. Like, okay, they're going to be upset in that conversation, but they're going to mentally prepare for it. And you set good expectations, and then you move forward with the service. It's more on the communication front than anything. If we learned anything through that, it's so true. And we focused on it, and it's still so true. So it's just interesting. It's double true, triple true.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Anything else that I haven't asked you that would be relevant to what we're talking about here that would be helpful to our listeners?
Just be creative. If you think about those, if you do client interviews and you really assess what you're going to do in the marketplace, truly take those problems that the clients are identifying as accurate. They might be annoying. They might not be something you want to do, but it actually is going to make you different. And that's what's going to sell. Just because you're a lawyer and just because you get good results, that's what we're all trying to do. Literally all of us are trying to do that. So we're a gym with weights. That doesn't make us interesting. What makes us interesting is here's a pain point in the marketplace and we're actually solving it. Person's like, oh, wow, you guys actually heard what I had to say. Thank you. I'm going to choose you. And I don't necessarily have any other good reason other than you said you're trying to solve the thing that I'm irritated about.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.